Hi students, and welcome to another week in your online general psychology course. I wanted to bring to you the task that you'll do this week. We're entering into chapter 2, but before we talk about this week, let's just recap last week. So last week during week 2, we started actually covering the content in the book and going over chapter 1. Chapter 1 should have taught you about what is psychology, what are the major schools of thought, the historical psychology and theorists that we have, and as well as exploring some of the careers in psychology. So this week we will shift to chapter 2, which is on psychology scientific method. I am breaking this chapter up into 2 weeks. So week 3 this week and week 4 next week, we will stay in chapter 2. So that's a little bit different, and it's the only chapter that I actually spend 2 weeks covering, but it is because of the content in the course and making sure that we go through it methodically and make sure that your understanding for psychology as a science has some emphasis. So this week you will, in your book, read chapter 2. I in here have PowerPoint without the narration, PowerPoint with the narration, and you will have 3 assignments in Connect. So for this week, 3 assignments in Connect over chapter 2. The first one will be called the concept clip, which is over independent and dependent variables. So as you go through and you start learning about the scientific method, one mode of research is experimentation, and when we run experiments, there's certain aspects of experiments that are included, such as independent and dependent variables. So I am actually going to have you do 2 assignments over independent and dependent variables just to hopefully make sure that you understand the difference between the 2. So the first one is the concept clip over independent and dependent variables, and the second one is over designing an experiment with dependent and independent variables. So just in a nutshell, an independent variable is the part of an experiment that you're manipulating. So it is your independent is what, as the researcher, you're controlling. So if I was researching the effect of caffeine on an individual, the independent variable would be the amount of caffeine that I give them. So I'm controlling whether they get caffeine or they get a placebo or they get half the dose of caffeine that maybe another experiment group gets. So that's the independent variable, the one you're doing something with, manipulating, controlling, whichever word you want to use there. And your dependent variable is a measurement of your independent variable. So just as it implies, dependent is dependent upon what happens with the independent variable. So back to my example of caffeine, if I came in and I gave half the class a placebo has non-active effect, but they don't know that. They think they're receiving a caffeine pill. They think everybody in the class is receiving the same caffeine pill. And the other half of the class is receiving a caffeine pill. So that's my independent variable, is the caffeine pill or the placebo, the one I'm controlling, the one I'm manipulating. And then my dependent variable would be a measurement of what happens to someone on caffeine. So maybe I'm looking at heart rate, maybe I'm looking at their level of awareness, how awake they are, maybe I am looking at memory. You know, it's whatever I'm designing in my study, but it is simply with the dependent variable a measurement of what is happening with the independent variable. Okay, so I hope that just kind of helps you understand independent and dependent. And again, you'll have 2 assignments in Connect that will give you some extra practice with that. And then your third and final assignment for the week is chapter 2 concept clip over the scientific method. So this assignment, as you read, as you learn this week about the scientific method, there's certain steps that are followed in the scientific method. They're very methodical, they're laid out, they're consistent. Every peer-reviewed publication that is sharing findings from an experiment has gone through the scientific method. So an assignment on that. And that is it for this week. You will not have a chapter quiz this week over chapter 2 because remember, we're spending 2 weeks in chapter 2. So this is the first part of the chapter. Next week in week 4, we'll study the second part of the chapter and you'll actually have your quiz next week. Okay, so 3 assignments, 2 over independent and dependent variables and connect, 1 over the scientific method, all due on Sunday, February 6th. So I hope that helps you understand what's coming for this week. Just want to encourage you to keep up the great work. I filmed these videos at the end of the previous week so that they're ready to go for you at the beginning of the week I'm talking about. So not everyone's historical influence psychologist assignment has been turned in yet, but many of you have turned it in. And the ones I have graded, you're doing a great job on those as you're doing on the assignments in Connect. So keep up the great work. I'm here if you have any questions. Again, I know that things continually change with the information and the plans and so forth. I just want to remind you, our course is an online course. We don't have Zoom, as you may have understood by this point, and we have, it was never designed to be a course that goes back to campus. So we will continue like this all 16 weeks up until final exams in May. It will be this format. So the message about returning to campus, and of course, if you do have face-to-face classes that have been meeting in Zoom for the past 2 weeks, they were planned to start back on Monday, January 31st. That has been delayed to, at this point, February 7th. Doesn't affect our class, but I mention it just so that you understand that ours will always stay just like we have been, no matter what the return to campus plan is. And also because some of you may have classes that are face-to-face and have been in Zoom and it affects them. So I hope that it gives you a little information about that. I hope you're doing well, taking care of yourself, staying healthy, and keep up the great work. I'm here if you have any questions whatsoever. So take care, everybody. Have a good week and have fun learning about psychology's scientific method.